Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Charles. Charles has been supporting this channel for over a year now as a general tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without amazing patrons like Charles. And for the personalized deck tech, Charles chose Jalira Master Polymorphist with a Creatures of the Deep theme. So basically, Jalira is going fishing. She's a 2/2 human wizard that costs 3 and a blue. You can pay 2 and a blue and tap and sacrifice another creature to reveal cards in the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card. You put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So basically, she's a polymorph on a stick. If we build this deck correctly, we can guarantee that we always hit a giant creature off of this. But what creatures will we sacrifice to ensure that guarantee? So our strategy for this deck is very straightforward. We're going to use non-creature spells to create tokens to sacrifice. Now these can be one-off effects, but they can also be token generators that can help us multiple times. And then how we win with this deck is very straightforward. We're going to polymorph those tokens into deadly creatures of the deep. Again, a 1/1 token might not be that threatening, but a deep sea monster definitely is. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tact number 1. It's MORPHIST time. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice to get a base land and play tapped. Next up, we've got 3 mana rocks that cost 2 with Guardian Idol, Star Compass, and Mind Stone. Guardian Idol comes into play tapped and taps for colors, so we can also pay 2 to make it into a 2/2 until end of turn. Star Compass also comes into play tapped and it can tap for a blue. And then Mind Stone can tap for a color, so we can pay 1 and tap and sacrifice it to draw a card. Next up, we've got 3 mana rocks that each tap for colorless with Worn Power Stone, Sisay's Ring, and Urgolem's Eye. Worn Power Stone does cost less than the other 2, but it does come into play tapped. And then Hedron Archive is the exact same as Sisay's Ring and Urgolem's Eye, but we can also pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. And then Firemind Vessel comes into play tapped, and we can tap to add 2 mana of different colors. Next up, there's Midnight Clock, which can tap for a blue, and we can pay 2 and a blue to put an hour counter on it. It says at the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock. And finally, there's Pendant of Prosperity, which enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. That opponent can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card, and then they can put a land card from their hand onto the battlefield, and then we get to do the same. So it's a good political card that can also ramp us and help us draw cards. But after we've ramped, what's next? It's time for us to go on to tactic number 2, token time. First up, there's Mirror Turbine, which has tap put a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token onto the battlefield. And then there's Scroll of Fate, which we can tap to manifest a card from our hand. Another essentially free token generator comes with Captain's Claws, which has whenever equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 white core ally creature token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. These free token generators are especially effective in this deck because again, we need our commander to be able to polymorph. Next up, we've got 3 generators that cost 1 to activate with Throne of Empires, Trading Post, and Acorn Catapult. Throne of Empires makes a 1/1 soldier, Trading Post makes a 0/1 goat for 1 life, and Acorn Catapult can deal 1 damage to our creature or player, and that creature's controller or that player puts a 1/1 scroll into play. And then we've got 3 more generators that cost a bit more to activate with Nuisance Engine, Sarpedian Empires Volume 7, and Orochi Hatchery. By paying 2 and tapping it, Nuisance Engine makes a 0/1 pest. Sarpedian Empires can make one of a few creature types for 3 mana. And then Orochi Hatchery is going to enter the battlefield with X charge counters on it, and by paying 5 and tapping it, we get a snake for each charge counter on it. Some other ways to make tokens come with Kasmina and Thopter Spy Network. Kasmina has spells your opponent's cast that target a creature or planeswalker you control, costs 2 more to cast, and her -2 is to create a 2/2 wizard, and then we loot. And then Thopter Spy Network says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, create a 1/1 Thopter. And whenever 1 or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. But the best token generator in this deck, in my opinion, is our Golden Pig of the deck. And the Golden Pig is going to be the #1 card out of our 99. The Golden Pig for this deck is Primordial Mist. It's an enchantment for 4 and a blue, and it says at the beginning of your end step, you may manifest the top card of your library. And then you can exile a face-down permanent you control face up. You may play that card this turn. So basically, this is part creature generator and part card advantage engine. Of course, we can polymorph that 2/2 with our commander to get something bigger, but if it's a valuable spell, we can actually just cast it because of this card. The amount of value that this can give us throughout the game is huge, and that's what makes it the Golden Pig. But outside of token generators, we've got other ways to make tokens. So now let's move on to tactic number 3, Side Salad. First up, there's Reality Shift, which says, exile target creature its controller manifests the top card of their library. So this is a flexible card that we can use on one of our opponent's creatures or on one of our own if it's going to die. And then Callous Dismissal says, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and it's got a mass 1. Next up, there's Stolen by the Fae, which says, return target creature with converted mana cost of X to its owner's hand. You may create X 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. And finally, there's Last Step Plating, which is a fantastic card for this deck. It says, amass 1, and you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So this gives us a token, and it protects us and our stuff. But we're still not quite done with polymorphing things just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 4, Gimme That. First up, there's Mere Mockery, which says, whenever enchanted creature attacks, you may put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature, exile that token at the end of the combat. So if we're going to be attacking with one of our own creatures, we can put this on that to keep getting tokens of it and then polymorph those tokens. We can also do the same on an opponent's creature if we know that they're going to be attacking with that creature. Keep in mind that we also get any ETBs or LTBs from that creature too. But perhaps an even more effective and brutal card in this deck is Chamber of Manipulation. It says, enchanted land has tap, discard a card, gain control of target creature until end of turn. So essentially we're just using those creatures as polymorph fodder. We might lose a card, but we're getting a ton of value out of this. But what exactly are those creatures of the deep that we're going to be polymorphing into? Let's go over them now in tactic number 5, Leviathan Levelers. First up, we've got Inkwell Leviathan, which is a 7/11 with Trample, Island Walk, and Shroud. And then Aether Squall Ancient is a 6/6 with flying. At the beginning of our upkeep, we get 3 energy. By paying 8 energy, we return all of the creatures to their owner's hands, but we can only activate this ability anytime we could cast a sorcery. And then Stormtide Leviathan is an 8/8 with Island Walk, and all lands or islands in addition to the other types, and creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. Luckily for us, most of our creatures of the deep have one of those too. But we're nowhere near done with our sea monsters just yet. So now let's move on to tactic number 6, Unleash the Kraken. First up, there's Nadir Kraken, which has, whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. So this might start off small, but it can definitely grow, and it can also create us a ton of tokens. And then there's Shipbreaker Kraken, which has Monstrosity 4 for 6 blue. When it becomes monstrous, we tap into 4 target creatures, and those creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps for as long as we control Shipbreaker Kraken. And then there's Scourge of Leech, which when it comes into play, we return each creature our opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands we control. So essentially this is a one-sided board wipe on a body. Next up, there's Kraken of the Straits, which says creatures with power less than the number of islands you control can't block Kraken of the Straits. And then both Tidal Kraken and Deep Sea Kraken are just straight up unblockable. Now we've gone over Leviathans and Krakens, what's next? Let's move on to tactic number 7, Denizens of the Deep. First up, there's Mesmerizing Benthin, which is a 4/5 octopus, and when it comes into play, we get 2/0/2 illusion creature tokens. Those tokens have, whenever this creature blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and Mesmerizing Benthin has hexproof as long as we control an illusion. So this creates us some very effective tokens that we can also polymorph too. And next up, there's Elder Deep Fiend, which has Emerge, so if we actually cast it, we can tap up to 4 target permanents. Then there's Serpent of Yawning Depths, which has Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents you control can't be blocked except by Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So essentially, most of the time, all of our big creatures are going to be pretty much unblockable. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't count our 2 whales with Aethertide Whale and Colossal Whale, but both of them have evasion on their own. Aethertide Whale has flying, and when it comes into play, we get 6 energy counters. By paying 4 energy counters, we can return it right back to our hand. And then Colossal Whale has Island Walk, and whenever it attacks, we can exile target creature defending player controls until Colossal Whale leaves the battlefield. Now, all these sea monsters are great and can be really deadly, but we need some card draw to make this deck run. So let's go over that now in tactic number 8, Deep Blue. First up, there's Careful Consideration, which lets us draw 4 and discard 3, but if we cast it during our main phase, we only discard 2. And then Precognitive Perception says draw 3 cards, and it's got addendum. If we cast a spell during our main phase, instead we scry 3, then draw 3. Next up, there's Opportunity, which just straight up draws us 4. Rush of Knowledge can be great thanks to some of our giant creatures. It says draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. And then Fact or Fiction says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand, the other into your graveyard. Epiphany the Drownyard is essentially an X-costed Fact or Fiction, but in reverse. And then Read the Rune says draw X cards. For each card drawn this way, discard a card unless you sacrifice a permanent. With the amount of tokens that we can make in this deck, we can usually sacrifice at least a few to this. And then Pull from Tomorrow says draw X cards, then discard a card. Next up, there's Brainstorm, which says draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. This can come in really handy if we've got a sea monster in our hand that we want to polymorph into. And then Future Sight says play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. So this gives us card advantage, and it also gives us a sneak peek on what we might hit with a polymorph. And finally, there's Commander's Awakening, which has Ascend, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing instead, only you draw a card. Again, with the amount of tokens that we can make, we're going to hit the City's Blessing pretty quickly. Now we've got a lot of great things going on with this deck, but how do we actually protect them? Let's find out in tactic number 9, not this time. First up, there's Swiftfoot Boots, which can help out either our commander or one of our big beaters by giving it Hexproof and Haste. Next up, we've got 3 counterspells with Negate, Unwind, and Rewind. Both Negate and Rewind are going to counter target non-creature spell, and Unwind's going to untap 3 lands. And then Rewind is similar, it can counter any spell and it's going to untap up to 4 lands. But what about dealing with things that our opponents already have in play? Let's find out in our last tactic, tactic number 10, Washed Away. First up, there's Aetherize, which is going to return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. So basically, if someone swings out at us, they're going to lose their board. Next up, there's Aether Gale, which says return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. And then Whelming Wave is going to balance all creatures to their owner's hands except for Krakens, Leviathons, Octopuses, and Serpents. So essentially with this deck, this is a one-sided board wipe. And finally, there's Engulf the Shore, which says return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. This one also can be pretty one-sided depending on how many islands we have. Again, some of our sea monsters are pretty huge, so they might just stay on board. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, we've got Cradle of the Accursed, Foundry of the Consuls, and Spawning Bed, each of which we can sacrifice for a token or tokens. Next up, there's Mistress Factory, which we can actually turn into a 2/2 by paying 1. And the rest of our mana base is very simple, we're going to be running 33 islands. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Jalira EDH rec deck will set you back $139.07. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.58. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add in Springjack Pasture by taking out an island. Next up, let's add in Retrofitter Foundry by taking out Sarpedium Empires Volume 7. And then let's add in Lightning Greaves by taking out Stolen by the Fae. Next up, let's add in Penman's Aura by taking out Weird Mockery. And then let's add in Breaching Leviathan by taking out Kraken of the Straits. Finally, let's add in Trench Gorger by taking out Tidal Kraken. And now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about this deck and what you think about the commander in general. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck tags. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tag dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.